Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Coffee Talk with Encore, the place where we discuss a variety of topics, all of which are important to therapy clinicians. Well, today is definitely something that's extremely important to all therapists, as we will be discussing therapy advocacy and ways in which clinicians can and should be advocates for their profession. But before we get too much further along, I would like to take a moment and introduce Claire Coleman, the president of Encore Rehabilitation. We are thrilled to have Claire join us today because of this topic being so vital to the therapy profession. Plus, Claire is certainly a wealth of knowledge and a strong advocate for therapy clinicians. And I just know everyone is going to find this discussion to be extremely valuable and an opportunity to learn more about how each of us can be a therapy advocate.
Thank you for having me today. I'm excited to be on Coffee Talk with Encore. And I'm really excited to talk about our advocacy efforts because it's important to our field. I think we have to take a look back. If we go back to fiscal year 2011 through probably fiscal year 2022, rehabilitation providers have incurred approximately a 29% reduction in reimbursement, all while the cost for providing these services has continued to climb. So it's really mission critical that we as clinicians advocate for expanding not just therapy services, but for the reimbursement that goes along with that as well.
Our state and national organizations all lead advocacy efforts, which is great, and that can be an easy process to join. But I think for us therapists who would rather go about it kind of on our own, it can be a little kind of an intimidating task to start those efforts. Do you have any suggestions or tips about how to set up a meeting with your senators or congressmen?
Absolutely. And it does seem intimidating, but it's really a very simple process. So you're going to see on your screen two web addresses that you'll be able to click on. This will allow you to find out, first and foremost, who your legislators are, whether it be your senator or whether it be your representative. When it comes to getting an appointment with your legislator, the one thing that you can do for sure is to get on their website. Their website is absolutely a wealth of information. On this website, you can most often click on a link that says, set up a meeting. If that's available to you on that website, you click on it, you set up a meeting, everything is done online. If you don't see that on the website, then usually there's a person that's located on the website that is the scheduler. So you go ahead, you find your legislator, you found the office where they're located in, you get onto their website, you are then able to set up a meeting, a request for a meeting, I should say. So you request, hey, listen, I'd like to speak with you on these particular topics. My name is, Claire Coleman. I live in Avon, Ohio. I'm a constituent of yours. These are things that are very, very important to me. You send that off, you probably wait for a couple of days, 2 or 3 days. If you don't hear anything back, you pick up the phone, you give them a call and you say, hey, listen, these are topics that are really very important to me. I'd like to make sure that my legislator hears my voice and understands what's important for me. Once you get that appointment, you head to the appointment, you sit down, you discuss all of the items that are pertinent to the topics that you have chosen. And then obviously it's always very important at the end of the day to follow up with a handwritten thank you note or a thank you note online as well.
That is really interesting because I have a feeling most people didn't realize it was actually quite as easy as that to be able to get in and get one of those appointments. That's fantastic. I do wonder, though, is there something that people can do to really kind of best prepare for those meetings and things that they should keep in mind and, thoughts they should put together, whether those meetings are in person or even on a virtual type of platform?
Sure. So, one of the things that when you do get a meeting, right, whether it be in person or in Zoom, you do have to be the content expert, right? So whatever it is, whatever topic, right, that you are choosing to be an advocate for, you need to make sure that you understand it. There are certainly two main organizations within our space, NARA and Advion. If you get to any of their sites, they have all of their legislative opportunities, the legislative sort of priorities that they've set for the year. You can look through them. You can print out documentation related to them so that when you go in person or online, you obviously can understand the topic that you're presenting. You have the handouts. It's always important to try to leave the handouts, either send them or leave them with the legislator, and obviously speak from sort of the heart about it as well. I think first and foremost, what you need to also remember is when you set up a meeting, you may not necessarily be meeting with the actual legislator themselves. Oftentimes you're meeting with the legislative aide, and that's okay. These are really important people. They are the individuals who inform the senators and the legislators on all topics related to healthcare. One of the things that, in the advocacy efforts that I've participated in, one of the things that's really impactful are stories. I think it's very important to make sure that as passionately and professionally as you can, that you state how this is impactful to you, right, as a constituent, as to an individual, how this particular topic really impacts you, or a story about how it impacts the patient that also may be within this individual legislator's district. Stories are powerful. I think there's great stories, great outcomes that we get in therapy, and it's very important to make sure the legislator really understands that, right? We have a responsibility to make sure that we're advocating for a very vulnerable population that we serve.
Claire, I think you alluded earlier, but there's been a ton of legislative change over the last 10 years. And I know there's a lot of areas that as therapists is very frustrating for us, but there are some regulations that I think we stand a chance of making an impact, and some that unfortunately we just probably are not going to make a change. For instance, I know that the 15% cut for assistants is really frustrating, especially for private practices and for rehab companies. But that legislation is so similar to what was done to nurse practitioners and physician assistants that it's unlikely we're going to change that. If you could pick 2 or 3 topics that you think we have a true chance of changing or making an impact, what would you prioritize people's advocacy efforts towards?
Yeah, I'd probably take a look at the top 4 items for me, right? So I think the first one is Medicare reform. I mean, we have to preserve rehabilitation providers reimbursement. I mean, we just have to. That is really the bread and butter of what it is that we do out in the field. The second thing is telehealth services. I think as we all know, there is unfortunately right now a disconnect between the public health emergency ending and the CPT codes related to telehealth practice. So right now, post the public health emergency, we'll be able to do telehealth through 2024. There's a little glitch in the system because the CPT codes for therapy are only out there through 2023. So it's really legislation that we have to start watching because telehealth is a very critical part of our services, not only just being able to service people that are out in fairly rural areas, but as the building does have any outbreak, it does give us the ability to continue to connect with those residents. I think we have to, the third priority really needs to be a focus on reducing administrative burden. I mean, I think if we could focus on removing sort of the process for burdensome prior authorizations, it would be amazing. We would save an enormous amount of time, and I think it would get the patient to our therapy services faster. And I think the fourth one, which is probably the most concerning, is the federal deficit. We really need to keep an eye on what budget cuts the Congress is going to have to come up with in order to balance that budget and make sure that there's no disproportionate harm that's really felt by rehabilitation providers or our residents, patients.
Well, there's certainly a lot of reasons why clinicians should be getting their voices heard and moving toward doing their part in supporting our professions. I mean, we all need every single one of us to join in and be a part of this movement. We really need to make sure that clinicians are, not only reaching out to lawmakers and making a difference there, but even advocate through their everyday efforts, and providing skilled interventions and skilled treatment and skilled, client education. All of those things are extremely important in making sure that all of us are doing what we can to be therapy champions and really staying on the lookout for, opportunities to advocate. We absolutely need to all be in the fight and do what we have to do every day and really make a difference in our professions.
Yeah, you know, sometimes it's not for everyone to be able to go in person, but the power of the pen is pretty mighty as well. So, you know, there's the ability to send a letter, right? If you take a look at any of these items that are very important to you, our legislators really do read these items and they really do take them seriously. So if an in-person meeting isn't for you, you can still get your voice heard, right, through making sure that you're sending a letter and letting your legislator know what's important to you.
Absolutely. And I can tell you from personal experience, I do receive letters back saying, you know, thank you for, you know, sharing your information and your interests. And so, you know, one way or another, our voices are getting heard. And I appreciate that extended, you know, offering to be able to send out letters, because it's not just an in-person or virtual meeting that'll make a difference. You know, every which way that we can reach out, it'll make a difference for sure.
Exactly.
Well, I would sincerely like to thank Claire Coleman, our president of Encore Rehabilitation, for joining us today and sharing some really incredibly important information with us on how each of us can be therapy advocates. And thank you to everyone for joining us today. We hope you've enjoyed learning more about therapy advocacy and look forward to having you tune in again for our next episode of Coffee Talk with Encore.